mean, this is the big news of the night for city mayor candidates to be advocating a borough vehicle tax.
Doesn't the tax have to be fair and equitable? You can't have just a tax in the city, right? Am I right, Guy? It has to be fair. It has to be.
Rural residents might have a post office box in the city, for
Right.
instance. That's just one little problem.
Okay, can I say something?
Tell you what, Guy, you're going to ask me a question about the vehicle tax, and we'll let all the candidates take another shot, because I've got to be fair to everybody here. That's what I've got to do here.
So I want to ask more about vehicle tax?
You can ask 2 questions. So you ask about the vehicle tax, and then I'll give everybody a chance to stay.
Let's do unification here.
Okay.
Okay. This is Sunday's News Miner. 4 mayor candidates answered at length, at great length, on unification. And I just went circled yes, no's, and maybes and things. It's a lot different answers than I've heard tonight from a couple folks. And that bothers me. This is a different audience than the 18,000 people reading the News Miner on Sunday. Seeliger, who's not here, said totally opposed to consolidation. Okay, we've disposed of him. Joe Fields says not at this time. Pretty clear. And I got a question at the end of my little synopsis here. Ms. Stiver, I gathered from this, and I'm not being overly harsh, but I gathered from this that you didn't really answer the question. You said, well, at first a good idea, but then it's a tough sell. I mean, I got the impression you didn't really answer the question. And Ms. Sturl, you said, yes, if there was a movement of city and borough residents for consolidation, I would support it. Well, we know the News Miner has been supporting this for 10 years, and as the editorial page. And so there's certainly a movement, whether it's quantifiable or many people. So my question is, of all you guys, if you think consolidation or unification should move ahead, do you think it ought to be approved by a vote of, which is what I understand the current new law is, a majority vote of the people inside the city and a majority vote of the people outside the city of Fairbanks? And I guess we can leave the city of North Pole out of this discussion to avoid complicating it, but it's got to, as I understand the law, it's got to be a majority inside and a majority outside. Or do you favor the legislature overriding this? And I'm sure that somewhere in the new law there's still a thing that says after a certain amount of time the legislature can pass something. If it doesn't get vetoed or overridden, it goes through. How do you think this should happen, if it happens at all?
Can we start with Joe Fields on this question?
Well, I think I answered it pretty well there. I said not at present, and then went on to point out that if you were to construct a municipality of Fairbanks, but that might be something that the state would do. I don't see it working, quite candidly. I don't see it happening anywhere in the country, and at the present time, I certainly don't support it. I think you'd end up you have to have a majority of both parties to have it work. I just can't see it any other way.
Thank you. And we'll go to Vivian.
When I answered that question, I pointed out the problems with the unification, the problems with the contracted with the police unions and the and the police and fire, and with the permanent fund. Also, it's going to be very costly, because what will happen is you have to go with the government. We're a first-class city, the borough's second class. That means what is happening in the city will have to happen in the borough. That means there will be building codes in the borough. There will be all these things. I didn't want to sound like I was skirting the issue, but if there are people out there who want to revisit again this issue, they should be able to come forward and have another discussion about it. But I'm not in favor of it, because it's not going to work. We don't have the numbers in the borough that would support the change, because you're going to go to a higher class, more responsible government. It's not going to go the other way. And there isn't duplication.
What about the city permanent fund?
What about it, sir?
Who gets it?
Well, that's the big issue too. We benefit in the city directly with our property taxes with that permanent dividend fund from its earnings every year. That's right. Who would get it? How would that work? Because we're not going to be treated as a service area. You guys are going to be treated like we're being treated. You're going to have police and fire. Those contracts are going equally across. It's going to be extremely expensive, and it's not doable. And I know that, and I apologize if I seem vague. I'm just not wanting to cut anybody off who would want to come talk to me about it.
You're clearer tonight than you were in the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Complicated issue to cover in 1 minute, for darn sure. Then we go to Terry.
Right, and Guy, I think the question was about consolidation, which my understanding is very different than merger and very different than unification. One deals with, and I don't know which one it is, but that you would dissolve both governments and have a new government. So the question was, would you support consolidation, which is different again than unification and merger.
Amen.
I certainly don't think because the news miner advocates for an idea, that means that the entire community advocates for it. So it takes more than the news miner to say, we support this, than for someone to jump on a bandwagon. It has to come from the people in the community. Certainly, my assumption has always been that the people of the borough have to support it and the people of the city have to support it. You certainly can't force that down anybody's throat because it impacts everybody.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And we go to Frank Turney.
Yes, I support the majority of the city and the borough voting on this consolidation issue, not unification without interference of the legislature. Once again, this consolidation top issue at Leaders Forum. Do you want me to name them? Participants were mainly business, civic leaders, members of the clergy representing the University of Fairbanks, Chamber of Commerce, Jeff Cook, spokesman William Alaska Petroleum, Labor Union representative Tim Sharp, Fairbanks Native Association, man, just on here. And their main goal was consolidation, two entities, to do away with the layer of the city government, to leave Santa Claus alone. That would mean unification. If we unified, it would mean to do away with North Pole. And I think people have to get that straight. Unification is two entities, not unified like they did down in Anchorage. That's unification. The municipality area, that's what they did down there. They did not consolidate. Consolidate is two entities. And that's what we're talking about here. And I think we can get, as far as the city goes, to get rid of that layer of litigation, golden parachute awards, and lawsuits coming from this corrupt city government. That's why I really want to consolidate, to do away with the top city attorney and the assistant attorney and the mayor and the city council. Get rid of them.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Very good. And this will be the last question for the candidates. We're running a little tight on time. And let's go ahead, Jim.
Such an honor, thank you. I have two. The first would probably be for Frank, since he brought up the marijuana issue, and I quite agree that most people are using it anyway. And I wondered if you had any idea of the dollar figure, especially in Alaska, if it's a second leading cash crop in the nation. It grows very well in Alaska, and so just the dollar figure. The second question is, since we're talking revenue, which I don't think is the most important thing to talk about in most elections, but it certainly is critical this year for the city. I have heard people say that since our churches are exempt and they are not living in their meeting in their homes or in rented upper rooms like the early Christians, they are living in expensive, huge edifices on expensive property. Why shouldn't they pay property tax if they're going to have these revenue produced buildings, and they're getting into the material world, and if anybody knows how much that might bring in, that would be interesting too.
Okay, so a two-part question. Is that for all the candidates, ma'am?
I don't care if they have an answer. If they don't want to answer, they don't have to. But particularly Frank, I thought he might know how much marijuana. The others seem to be kind of negative about that.
In 2006, Alaska marijuana crop, cash crop, valued at more than $129 million, and topped the state's next leading cash crop, hay, at $6 million. Alaska's not unique. 11 other states, marijuana is a top cash crop, bringing in a total of $35.8 billion. Right now, there's a federal farm aid bill right now in Congress, and they're waiting for the state legislature to act on it. And that's what I'm pushing for, regardless if I make mayor or not. I'm pushing for that, because we can regulate it like tobacco and alcohol. That's for damn sure. And that maybe it wouldn't happen to that kid, that $20 shooting out here that happened to that kid. If it was regulated, maybe this would never happen.
Thank you, Frank. And for the rest of the candidates, it was a two-part question. Do you favor changing state law to take away